Most likely, if you're arriving in South Africa, you would probably have either a direct flight to Johannesburg and then a connecting flight somewhere else, or you would fly into Cape Town, but it's more likely that you'll land in Johannesburg. So seeing as you're coming to Johannesburg anyway, you should include it as a destination. What you can expect when you land in Johannesburg. So first of all, you'll be arriving at an airport called OR Tambo. OR Tambo is basically the second biggest international airport in the whole of Africa. Now, I would recommend using a metered taxi or like an airport shuttle. Uber is not best for the airport because first of all, you don't have reliable Wi-Fi. Second of all, the Ubers don't have a specific pickup location because currently the main metered taxi drivers have the priority preference at the airport, and there's a little bit of what could I say, like not quite fighting between them, but basically the taxi guys are trying to own the airport, and so it's quite tricky getting your Uber. Also, your Uber might tell you wait at pillar 15, then you don't know where pillar 15 is. So you're really not going to go wrong with using a metered taxi in this case. They will probably tell you the price up front. The last time I took such a taxi was about 700 Rand, which is really not much. Basically, at the exchange rate right now, it's more or less, just to make it a round number, basically like 20 Rand is $1, more or less. If you are staying in certain locations, you could also use the Gautrain. Now the Gautrain, or you can call it Gautrain if you don't go that is basically quite a sort of a high-speed train. We're very proud of it. We had like European engineers come and build it for us for the World Cup, although it wasn't quite ready for the World Cup, but it's an amazing train. And it goes to about, I think it's 7 main locations at the moment. So if you're staying in Sandton, if you're staying in Rosebank, that's a great option. There is also another type of a Uber thing called a Bolt, and they have these little yellow cars. So there are a lot of transport options that are easy enough and inexpensive enough for you to get around. There is nowhere else in the world that I know of where you can have almost a first-class city, but be within 40 minutes drive of very epic wildlife activities.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Back and forth, and she's using the tip to kind of scratch and poke.
Yeah.
Standing in the middle of our horses, and there's a giraffe.
It's very strong stand. She's staying there longer.
These are just some of the awesome wildlife activities you can do close to Johannesburg. If you want to find out more about how you can book a tour like this, please visit our website, also linked below.
Secondly, it has got such a unique historical background with apartheid, in terms of the Apartheid Museum, in terms of Mandela's house. In terms of Soweto. We are kind of like the New York of Africa. Sometimes feels to me like a whole world in one city. Like we have very rich people, very poor people. We have every kind of race and nationality almost you can imagine that lives here. Within that, there are so many different African tribes that we have 11 official languages, only 2 of which are actually like European sort of languages, which is English and Afrikaans. Afrikaans is more related to Dutch, very close to Dutch with a little bit of French mixed in. And then the rest are all African languages. People's traditional dress is the colors. I mean, it is vibrant. People will have bright orange. People will have yellows and blues and turquoise and all these colors, and these beautiful like headdresses and jewelry and dancing and singing. I mean, it's incredible. So you definitely, while you're here, you want to visit a cultural village.
Our Soto lady, she's busy grinding soca.
Ceremonies, you know, especially wedding things, are very specific to each culture, how people get married and what kind of dowries they pay and all this kind of thing. It's fascinating. So you have to see that, because people don't realize it, but it is really special that we actually have all these cultures alive and thriving.
Nice.
The other thing people don't know about Johannesburg is we have some beautiful mountains very close by to the city. Now, the mountains are so old that they are not huge anymore. So they're smaller than the mountains in Cape Town, because these mountains are like something like 2.3 billion years old. Okay, they are from a time when South Africa was an inland sea, and then a huge meteorite hit the earth around 2.3 billion years ago, which actually allowed us to discover gold, because it pushed the gold to the surface with all the ripples that are created. And there is the most beautiful hiking you can do there. You can find beautiful waterfalls and rock pools. There's wildlife activities, there's adventure activities like zip lining. I'm a little nervous, but it's going to be fun. On top of that, you've got, you know, activities like fishing and quad biking. Another big plus point of Johannesburg is we don't have malaria. So if you are here and you are doing wildlife activities around us, you don't have to take malaria tablets. However, if you go up more north to the Kruger Park, etc., you do have to take malaria tablets. So that's a big plus point for us. But it's not the end of the world if you have to take malaria tablets. It's very simple. It doesn't affect you. So where will you stay when you come to Johannesburg? Okay, so Johannesburg, just to give you an idea, is a big metropolis. So you kind of need to decide whether you are on the north, east, south, or west. So the eastern side is where you'll be coming into the airport, just to give you a location there. The southern side is where you're going to find Soweto and a lot of that interesting culture, and also the history of the mining, because that's really where that took place, because Johannesburg was started as a mining town in the 1900s. And then the west is more like nature and rocks and like beautiful scenery, and there's a beautiful botanical gardens there that's got 2 huge eagles that live there with a massive waterfall that's very popular, the Walter Sisulu Botanical Gardens. And then the east side, oh no, I said the east side, sorry, then the northern side is basically like, you know, it's sort of like the luxury suburbs in a way. Not that you don't get luxury suburbs in the east, the west, and the south, but that was the suburb where the rich mining owners built their houses. So it became more of a green suburb. It became more famous for its parks and its trees, and you know, it's a different feeling, like it feels like suburbia. So there are 2 main areas in the northern suburbs that you'll probably end up staying, and that will be Sandton or Rosebank. They are very popular. They have beautiful upmarket accommodation options. They have a stunning mall. The buildings are like very modern. Some of them were only finished in 2020, can you believe it? So like the one building in Sandton, the Leonardo, which is now the tallest building in Southern Africa, was literally finished during the time we don't want to talk about. But you're definitely not going to walk in the street. Please, people, no matter where you are, unless you're on a guided tour, don't just walk in the street anywhere, because that's just not done here. And especially at night, unless you're in a shopping mall or you're in your hotel, don't walk at night. That's just a big no-no. Generally, also people don't really stay out after 9 p.m. on weekdays because most people get up super early for work and school, and also as a safety point. And then on weekends, probably like 10, 11 p.m. So we don't have much of a nightlife unless you go with a guided tour, or as I say, if you have recommendations from your hotel where you are literally going to be transported there and brought back, then that's fine. There are some nice clubs and pubs and bars and restaurants. The restaurant scene is fantastic. Now, Johannesburg city centre has different faces to it. There is one part that you don't want to go at any time for any reason because it just looks run down and horrible. Newtown is amazing. Also, there's like the Bono Center where you can do all these really cool science experiments and things, and they've got like a huge dinosaur exhibit, and that's very cool for kids. And then there's also very modern restaurants and trendy little shops and things. But again, I would go with a tour. If you're going into Johannesburg, have your specific destination and have your lift worked out beforehand, because there are some not so great areas in the city center, and definitely you don't want to be driving there by yourself, because if you get lost, you're going to end up in a horrible part and then it's not great and you'll feel unsafe. There are many tours you can do of Johannesburg, and they are all so different that I can't recommend any particular tour. There's like a wall art graffiti tour you can do as a walking tour in Johannesburg with a tour group, and that's very special. There's places like Victoria Yards, which is like this craft I don't know, container place where you get all these little shops and coffee places and food places. That's really interesting to see. And then you can actually go with a big red bus, and you can also go through Johannesburg and see some historic points, and everywhere where you get off, that has fantastic security. Also in all the main tourist destinations, I have noticed they have posted security guards, so you will be safe. Because I know security is a big point, but tourism is like very big in South Africa, and we really want to look after our tourists. And so when something happens, it's usually tourists that have gone outside of those areas into very strange, very poor areas, unfortunately, or areas that the people know to stay away from, but they got lost and their GPS took them on the shortest route or something. So you've got to definitely have a plan for how you get to where you're going. I don't know if anyone has spoken about working from Johannesburg, but we actually get a lot of tourists that come here to work. They either come here on a week stay to do something at an embassy, or to do some kind of training for some international company, because a lot of international companies set up base here to go into Africa, because we have a very first world infrastructure due to all the mining investment that we had. There are a lot of co-working spaces that have popped up. They have good Wi-Fi, they have good coffee. They are easy to find. You could drive there and park in a safe location. I haven't explored the whole of the co-working scene, but in the northern suburbs there are a lot of options, and I will link an article in the description below to all the co-working spaces, just so you can get an idea. There are so many choices. Like if you're vegan, you'll find vegan food. If you're milk intolerant, dairy intolerant, you'll find non-dairy alternatives. If you do eat dairy, our cheese is actually quite delicious, because we do have a bit of a Dutch heritage. And then we have really good yogurt. If you love yogurt, our yogurt is world class. Really, it's amazing. And the food prices are expensive for us, but they probably won't be expensive for you coming here. You can even eat out at a restaurant for quite an affordable price. Like a sort of normal family restaurant, you could have a meal for two for maybe 500 Rand, including a drink and a meal. If you go for something more fancy, maybe up to 1,000 Rand, but that is still very cheap if you convert it to dollars. Also, because so many different cultures and nationalities came to live here at different periods, like we have Italian people, German people, Chinese people, Japanese people, I don't know, anybody you can imagine, Portuguese people. So any type of food you like, you could find it here. And obviously it might have its own South African flavor. Indian food as well, we've got a very big Indian community. Although, please note, they call themselves South African Indians. They don't see themselves as Indian Indians because their culture has kind of diverged, I guess, over the time that they've been here, and they've made their own versions of certain dishes. If you're a fitness person, as I say, there's so much activities you can do. We have gyms. I don't know if they allow you to do a short version, but I think you can pay a daily rate. As far as I know, we've got gyms like Virgin Active, Viva Gym, and there's a couple of other brands that I forget right now, but there's a lot of gym options. People like being fit in this country. And then if you want to just enjoy the outdoors, we have a thing which is really awesome called Park Run and My Run, which happens every single Saturday in some park space, and you can register for free. And the park run is, they usually give the exact time it leaves, but it's usually somewhere between 7 and 8, maybe 7:15, 7:30 or 8. And they will tell you on their website, if you go to Park Run or the My Run, I'll also link the descriptions below, you can see all the venues where that happens. And it's really nice. You get out, you know, maybe 50 or 100 other people are walking at the same time, and you get to just experience the beautiful rivers that we have running through Johannesburg and the beautiful parks, and just enjoying the weather. We have the best weather in the whole world, I promise you. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's sunshine most of the time. It's sometimes rains, we have big storms, but then they go away and it's beautiful again. Okay, things to expect that might be different to your country. If you come from the United States, I'm sorry, we don't have air conditioning in most accommodations unless it's a hotel. So if you're staying in Airbnb or like a bed and breakfast, you will probably not have air conditioning in Johannesburg because it's just not practical for us. We are not used to it. It costs us too much electricity. Our electricity is very expensive for us. And we also unfortunately have electricity downtime where we don't have electricity for maybe 2 hours in a day due to what we call load shedding, which is where we basically share the power amongst everyone by having certain times where you're switched off. And there is a schedule and there is an app called Eskom Push, which you can also download ahead of time and look at your suburb and see what's happening. But everybody's got a solution for that. The restaurants normally have some kind of generator or something that will keep the Wi-Fi going, and there'll be lights, and so it's not terrible, but it can catch you unawares, and that's why air conditioning is also not going to work. There is usually a fan though, so you won't be completely with nothing. Also in Johannesburg, because we don't have malaria, we don't bother with mosquito nets on the windows. So yes, at night you might get a mosquito or two in your house or in your accommodation. Not so much hotels, but definitely if you're staying in a more informal sort of one. But don't stress. Then buy yourself some mosquito repellent, and if you keep the windows closed after 4 p.m. they won't come in. Or you have a fan. The trick we have is we sleep with a fan on that blows over the bed, and then the mosquitoes can't land on you. So not that there's 100, but there's 1 or 2 and they sound annoying. So the fan drowns out that nee sound, which is just terrible. So that's something else that I'm telling you as an inside tip. What else? Oh, then on the roads you will see these minibus vans. This is like the transport that takes the majority of South Africans to work. And they drive like crazy. Sometimes they drive on the wrong side of the road, like onto oncoming traffic. Sometimes they drive in the emergency lane. Sometimes they go straight on a turning lane. And then just the beautiful nature, like everywhere you go, even in the city, you hear the birds singing, you hear crickets at night. It's really special. And the last thing is that people are very friendly and helpful for the most part. So really don't skip Johannesburg. Make it a stop, even if you spend 1 night, but I would recommend maybe 2 nights, and try it.